What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Jake from Citizen JV, and today I'm going to basically post my own type of ideas or theories of what could be happening of this year's Gamescom 2024, which will be starting as of next week of August 20th. And so my first theory is that since we've had the potential of imminent reveal of Soul Reaver 1 and Soul Reaver 2 remasters coming or inbound or imminent. And so going back to my theory, my first theory is I really think that if these are coming as remastered versions, I believe that these games are already remastered in some type of form. I really thoroughly believe that because if they had that sign saying Soul Reaver 1 and Soul Reaver 2 remastered, that's telling me in a matter of context in my own type of perception to where I think that these games are already remastered. So there, I'm going to put the hammer down on that because I actually thoroughly believe that. So my second theory is to the factor of that even if these games are not completely compellingly true or 100% legit of not getting remasters and not coming out in this new era of gaming when it comes to the PlayStation 5, PC, or Xbox Series X or S. But again, I really think that it's still happening because here's the thing. With so many rumors that have been going on into circulation for so many years since 2022, I believe, since we've had that survey, I really thoroughly believe that we are going to get these remasters. There's no question about it because I don't think that's the only reason. I think another reason for it is, in fact, I believe it's because of the fact of the graphic novel that is eventually going to be coming out probably, I would say, in the next year or two, because I do know that graphic novel is in the works, and it is a prequel to that of Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver. I sure know that a lot of people already know that, but I'm just thought I'd put that a little knowledge out there for you anyways. So my second theory. I actually thoroughly believe that if this year's Gamescom, they could initially either do two things, hence going into the third theory here soon, is that the second theory of this is that I really think that it could be a potential shadow drop for these games for this year and not being announced. And, because there have been games to where they have been announced after the fact that they have been shadow dropped, much like the first Quake 1 remastered that we've had maybe about 2 years ago. And it's astounding as to what remasters are able to do when it comes to certain type of engines. And Night Dive Studios, they have been doing a very great job on remasters because we've had the remake of System Shock of this year. And then we've had Quake 2, Doom 64, and then recently we got a re-release of Doom and Doom 2 with all the expansion packs and with all different types of mods along with it. So that's my second theory. Now, the final theory is here, which is the third theory. Now, bear this in mind. I know this might be a little confusing or maybe a little far-fetched, but I do believe that when it comes to having games like this, when it comes to remasters, they take less time of remastering, much more of a remake. Because I do know when it comes to a remake, much like the System Shock remake that came out this year for consoles, is that they take longer because there's a lot of assets involved. Productivity, graphic design, visual design, the sound, and the whole entire mechanics of the whole entire remake of a game itself, like the System Shock remake. And so I think when it comes to remasters, though, remasters are not always the greatest of ideas. But to me personally, I really think that when it comes to the Soul Reaver 1 or Soul Reaver 2 remaster with the third theory, so my apologies that I did not talk about that very extensively at the beginning of this video. So I really think that they could either be shadow dropped and not announced, but then again, They could have the remastered versions of Soul Reaver 1 and Soul Reaver 2 remastered, shadow dropped on a lot of people not knowing about it, and then they could eventually actually announce it after having the shadow drop for these games for this year. It's a possibility. And it's funny, the reason why I say this is because I actually commented on another YouTube channel discussing about the remasters or the potential remasters of these games. And they actually liked my theories that I put into place here that I said on this video. And while these theories are only theoretical, and while they are I'm not saying they are substantial. I'm not saying that they're 100% legit. These are my own opinions or theoretical theories of what potentially could be happening for the Soul Reaver 1 and Soul Reaver 2 remasters for this current generation of hardware. I do believe that it might be antithetical to the remasters of Soul Reaver 1 and Soul Reaver 2 coming this year. Because if you think of it this way, my apologies on that, is that I really think when you have a series like the Legacy of Kain series, this series is by far one of the best series I've ever played. I have mentioned that so many times in my past previous commentary videos, especially my Soul Reaver videos that I put up for the past week or two, and they were pretty successful in the viewership. So I'm going off a little tangent there, so my apologies on that as well. So again, I really think when it comes to a series like the Legacy of Kain series, this series was the pinnacle of gaming history amongst others. You know, like the Infamous games, or like the Resistance games on PS3, or Uncharted. I mean, you have all these really cool first-party titles, or third-party or second-party titles. But again, I really think when it comes to the Legacy of Kain series, I would say I really think that we need to get these games remastered. While I do believe that other people are saying on my comment section are saying, we don't want this to happen because we think that they should get either a remake rather than a remastered. And I'm actually going to agree to disagree with that, because again, I really think that, doing a remaster, because these games in their time, in their prime, especially Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver 2, it was a PS2 title. So the PS2 was able to do a lot more things along with the game, in terms of, polygon counts, resolutions, and pixelizations to make it much more intricate in its own conceptual design of the whole entire game. And I think that's where I think Soul Reaver 2 would be a much better idea to remaster rather than Soul Reaver 1. But again, now I'm going to go to Soul Reaver 1 here, because I think when it comes to Soul Reaver 1, though, if they are going to remaster Soul Reaver 1, I thoroughly believe that they should remaster the Dreamcast version rather than the PlayStation 1, because the PlayStation 1 is indeed an older title, obviously, than from the Dreamcast. I mean, they're both old titles, so scratch that. So again, Soul Reaver 1 had much more higher polygon counts, resolutions, and everything else, and vice versa on the Dreamcast version rather than the PS1. The PS1 version is atrocious. While I still loved it, the game is not... I don't think the PS1 version of the game is worthy enough for remaster. I think the Dreamcast version is a much better idea to remaster than the PS1. It's a hot take, I know, but I'm going to stand by that. So again, I think when it comes to remasters, as I previously mentioned about the System Shock remake, and, with Quake 1 and Quake 2, and all the games that we've had in the past few years from Night Dive Studios, they've done a really good job with remasters. And I'm kind of curious as to where these remasters are going to go. I think that if they are going to remasters, like I said before, I do believe that they are already remastered. But again, I'm hoping that this is the case. I'm really hoping that we could get this series, Soul Reaver 1 and Soul Reaver 2, come to fruition. Because like I said again in my past video, this series was the pinnacle of gaming history back in the PlayStation and on the Xbox or on PC. Much like Legacy of Kain Defiance, because that was the first game, I believe, on which was multi-platform. It was PS2, Xbox, and on PC. But again, this series as a whole is the epitome. It's the epitome of gaming evolution and revolution, because this series was renowned for its, not just its gameplay, it was the fact of the deep storylines that all these 5 games took place in. The world of Nosgoth. It was centered around the Pillars of Nosgoth as well, because the Pillars of Nosgoth in these games was the importance and the crux of this whole entire series as a whole. And I think that's where these games are very valuable to a lot of fans, much like myself. And it's the reason why I fell in love with these games in the first place. And as I said before, when I played Blood and Legacy of Kain, it was one hell of an experience. I loved the experience from that game, even though the loading times in that game were absolutely boring and atrocious. But I still loved it because it was the world, it was the narration, it was the voice act, it was everything of what that game was able to pertain. Just, telling us a really deep derivative story centered around a world that was decaying, a world that was foreboding, a world that was dark. And I think that's where these games are the epiphany of what these games were able to provide back in that time when we had these games many years ago. And that is why I think having Soul Reaver 1 and Soul Reaver 2 remastered, I'm calling it. I actually do believe that they will announce it this year at this year's Gamescom 2024 because, again, I do remember that there was an update. I forgot what article it was from, but they were saying that stay tuned for an update coming out sometime this August, and I believe that update is going to be this year's Gamescom 2024. And like I said again, I actually thoroughly believe that. I wouldn't hold my breath if it doesn't happen, but again, it's like if these games do in fact get announced, and like I said, I'm going back to what I was saying before one more time. I do believe that they are remastered. I do believe that they could either be shadow dropped and not announced. And then going back to my third theory again, I believe that they are going to be shadow dropped, then announced after the fact and saying, these games are out now. Because, like, again, with Bethesda Softworks or id Software, from when they released the remaster versions of Quake or Quake 2, they announced those games right after those games initially shadow dropped. And I think that this could be the case. I could be wrong. But again, I'm just putting my own 2 cents out there and really say I think that this is going to happen. I'm keeping my fingers crossed. I love this series like crazy, and this series definitely needs to be having a comeback. So anyway, so much further ado, thank you for tuning in. Greatly appreciate it. Any comments or questions, please feel free to put them in the comment section below. Chat with you guys later. Peace, guys.